the students are adamant for break, then we can have it. Otherwise, we can start.
No, sir. Continue, Rakhi.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Again, it is the continuation of parasitology. So I would be telling you about few parasites. As Javed Usman Rao has already told you something about this bug, and that is the Palentidium coli. It is the largest parasite that is found in the stool, and the characteristic feature is that it has cilia on all the sides. So these two features are pathognomonic for Palentidium coli. One is that it is the largest trophozoite form found in the stool, and secondly, it has cilia on all the sides. So it is relatively easy to identify from these. It has the cyst form, of course, and that helps in the transmission. Here you can see the life cycle that the cysts are passed in the stools of the human beings. Then after they remain in the surroundings, and then they are ingested as such, and they convert to the trophozoite form in the small intestine. It can cause diarrhea as well as dysentery, of course. It is not that common in Pakistan, and the reason being is that it is a characteristic group. There are
sorry to interrupt. Slide को full screen पर ले आएं please.
सर आपकी आवाज भी कम है, काइंडली माइक पे एडजस्ट कर लें. थैंक यू.
ओके,
थोड़ा सा माइक करीब ले आएं. जो हेल्प करी ना, क्या नाम है आपका?
मैं मीना मैं कर रही हूँ.
हाँ प्लीज, थैंक यू.
क्लियर आ रही है मैम पिक्चर? ये
तीन पार्टिसिपेंट्स कह रहे हैं छोटी तरह इसको बड़ी कर दें. जो वीडियो आपकी है ना उसको कम कर सकते हैं.
ठीक है मैम.
Participants, are you all satisfied?
Okay.
Okay or not?
जी मैम.
Okay. Continue.
okay. It causes ulcers in the colon, and it is mostly treated either with tetracycline or metronidazole. As you can see that its excitation cyst comes to the oral route, the oral route, and then it multiplies in the colon. By invading the walls of the colon, it can cause the dysentery. There are other forms which are stained with different stains. And the reason being that it is not that common in Pakistan is that its basic reservoir is the pig. So in my lifetime, I am seeing only twice or thrice, but it is quite common in other countries. Next parasite, can anybody amongst the students can tell what is this parasite that I am going to discuss? Anybody?
Hookworm.
Hookworm, yes. No, this is hookworm, and the reason being that it is hookworm is the typical ova that is visible on the left side of the screen. Then you can see that it gains access to the human body by penetrating into the skin. And while penetrating the skin, it sometimes causes the ground itch, and there are different forms of cholestoma, and few of them also cause the cutaneous larva migrans. So here you can see that after crossing the skin, it enters into the venous system, and through the heart, through the trachea, and it again is ingested and reaches the stomach, and this is the life cycle, which is the intestine. So while being in the skin, it can cause the allergic systems as well as cutaneous larva migrans or jaundice. And while passing through the lungs, it can sometimes cause the pneumonitis, but its main symptoms are adult form that resides in the intestine. So main symptoms are by virtue of its stay in the intestine. You can see that cutaneous larva migrans sometimes by the ankylostoma duodenale, but most commonly by the other forms of ankylostoma. That it causes ground itch and like sort of serpentine sort of picture on the skin. Here again, the life cycle is shown, that it passes through the lungs and then reaches the stomach and intestine. Here you can see its ova that has its characteristic is that few of the eggs that are found in the stool, few are white stained or brown in color, while few are not white stained and not brown in color. They are so called black and white eggs. So it is one of those eggs which are not white stained and not brown. It is one of the identification features of the ova of ankylostoma duodenale. Other common form of ankylostoma is Decatur americans. That is not that common in Pakistan. So different features that differentiate between ankylostoma duodenale and Decatur americans is first the pair of teeth. There are two pair of teeth in ankylostoma duodenale, while there is only one pair of teeth in Decatur americans. While the ova, they are almost similar, and slight differences in the bursa of the parasite. You may be asked in the MCQ form what are the parasites which are important in causing anemia. So ankylostoma duodenale is one of the top parasites that causes anemia. Other parasites that can cause anemia are malaria, leishmania or cholera, and these are uncommon in Pakistan, but giardia sometimes can cause diarrhea because of the malnutrition. And other forms of Daphrobacillus and trypanosoma. These are not common in Pakistan, but they are the causes of. So in MCQs, you may be sometimes asked what are the parasites which gain access to the human body through penetration of the skin. So one of them we have just discussed, that is ankylostoma duodenale. And any other, can any student tell any other form of parasites, any other example that can gain access to the penetration of the skin? Any student, please?
Sir, cutaneous larva.
Okay.
Yeah, margin.
Cutaneous larva migrans is the same as ankylostoma duodenale or other forms of ankylostoma. Any other example that you can tell through their life cycle that these are the parasites which can gain access to the body of human body through penetration of skin?
Bacterial parasite.
So the next one is Strongylitis trachonalis that gains access to the skin penetration of skin, and then is the Schistosoma hematobius. Okay, the next we come on to the cystodes that are the tapeworms, and the most common of them is the Tinea. It has two forms, Tinea saginata and Tinea solium. When humans are the intermediate host, the infections are generally more serious than intestinal infections with the adult tapeworm. This is important. So the genus Agenata that is the intermediate host is the cattle, and the definitive host mostly is the. So it does not cause that serious a disease, especially when it's the definitive host is the human. These are the typical eggs that are seen, and that is one of the proclorated or one of the segments of the adult form. So these are the full forms of the tape form. They are quite long, but in the intestines, it is shed mostly in the form of small segments. Sometimes you can see that those segments are yellowish brown in color. Their length may be 1 centimeter, maybe 3-4 centimeter, maybe more than that. And sometimes you can see they are twitching or they are showing some slight motility as well. And if you dissect them, you can see such form of striations in that. Here again, going to the life cycle that basically it is acquired through the ingestion of the meat, and then it develops into adult form in the small intestine of the human beings, and then the eggs are shed, and these eggs are ingested by the fetus. This is the typical life cycle of Venus agenata. You can see its excitation and then the formation of the adult tape form. Another form is the genus Solium, that is mostly through the pigs, and you can see that the form of oncosphere or the cystic form is seen in the muscles of the cattle or the pigs, and then the humans are get ingested through the ingestion of raw or undercooked meat. And there are few differences in the proglottate of the genus Solium and genus Agenata that we discussed. But egg form of both the genus Agenata and genus Solium, they are similar. But sometimes few lab techs, they get confused or they are confused by simply by the food particles. They sometimes give such picture. So I have seen that it is sometimes overdiagnosed, or you can say the false positive report in the. Again, the differences from Agenata and Solium, the spoilers as well as the segments. You can see the segments are 1,000 to 2,000 segments in Agenata, while there are 800 to 1,000 in the Solium. And then the lateral branches, they are much more in Agenata, usually 15 to 30, while in the proglottate of Solium, they are few, usually 7 to 10. The more problematic or more serious symptoms are caused by the genus Solium, and that is the intermediate host is swine, but it has two forms. I would come into that shortly. In the cystic sarcosis, the larva penetrate the intestine of the wall and migrate to different organs, especially in the genus Solium. So this larval form, when it reaches the brain, heart, lungs, or eyes, and there they sometimes get calcified, the more serious symptoms are we can see. There again, the genus Solium, you can see it is mostly through the pig, and by eating the raw or undercooked pork, you get humans get the infection with the genus Solium. This genus Solium similarly then sometimes penetrates the intestine. Here you can see that sometimes it goes into the muscular system, the portal system, and then gets develops into the cystic sarcosis form. you call it cystic cellulose. Here you can see here that humans are the intermediate hosts. So the tinea solium, it mostly through the pigs. Sometimes you ingest directly the port of the port, undercooked port, and this system it can cause cysticercosis. But the other is that sometimes, rarely, the eggs of the tinea solium they are ingested as such by the human beings, and they may also cause cystic fibrosis, especially in the muscles. So it has a two way of life cycle. So since the human meat is not eaten by the other cattle and other farms, so mostly it is a dead end. Here you can see the cysticercosis lesion that has been diagnosed with MRI scan of the brain. It is more common in those areas where the humans are directly in contact with the pigs. I already told you that there are a few eggs which are bile stained, while few are not. So tinea is one of those that is bile stained and brownish in color. Other eggs which are brownish in color are Ascaris lumbricoides, Trichuris trichuria, Paragodamus bustermani, and Daphlomosis. This is one of the diagnostic features of the eggs we see in the lab. Sometimes in the MCQs you may be asked what are the diseases or what are the parasites that you can get through eating raw or undercooked pork. So number one is the tinea, one is Trichinella spiralis, and the other is the tinea solium. Coming on to the next parasite, can any of the students tell what sort of parasite I am going to discuss from the egg? If anybody can tell.
Ascaris lumbricoides.
I would come on to that. Ascaris is not Ascaris, and one of the diagnostic features of Ascaris is that it is bile stained and it is brownish color. While here you can see that it is black and white. Any other hint? Anybody else? So it is not round. The Ascaris.
Tapeworm.
No, it is not tapeworm. So this one. So this one is the Entropius funicularis, the threadworm. Here you can see that it is oval, it is not round. And secondly, you can see that it is not brown or bile stained, it is black and white. So this is the typical. Sometimes it is also seen as a D shape. One of the walls is slightly flat. And this is the parasite that you can see there. So this is Entropius funicularis, also called the pinworm or threadworm. So this is seen in the or appendix. This is pruritus, eczema, and salpingitis, and mostly treated with albendazole or mebendazole. This is the life cycle. Mostly it is just fecal-oral. The egg form is passed in the stools and it gets mature in just in few days time. So it is ingested and it can cause the life cycle is complete. As such, there is no other intermediate host involved. Mostly it is seen in the kids and the perianal region is mostly. It is diagnosed by the cellulose tape form technique, in which the cellulose tape is just folded on the slide, and then it is pressed into the inner region. The eggs get attached to the cellulose tape. The cellulose tape is just inverted and pasted on the slide, and we see under the microscope there are a lot of eggs that can be seen. Here is another view of the eggs, numerous eggs that were seen with the cellulose tape preparation. Sometimes you may be asked in the MCQs the use of cellulose tape preparation for diagnosis of parasite. Here you can see that it sometimes gives the D shape. One side is flattened and the other side. And you can see that the male form is small while the female form is big. It may be asymptomatic, but it may cause variation, sometimes vaginitis, sometimes rarely appendicitis. You can see this in the tissues, especially of the intestine as well. For example, here you can see in the pinworms in the appendix. Here you can see the egg seen in the appendix. It may cause perianal abscess, and then you can see numerous ova in the pus. Here again you can see it in the tissues. So sometimes you may be asked what are the parasites which are as such you can see in the stools of the human beings. So anybody amongst the students tell what are the parasites? Okay, I would go ahead. So one of the important ones is the Ascaris lumbricoides. You can see the worm as such in the stools. And the Entropius vermiculus worms can be seen in the stools. Then the segments of Pinus arenata, as I have already told in the previous segment of the. So this is another worm. I move on to the other worm that is common in Pakistan, and that is the whip worm. It is the Trichuris trichuria. You can see that its shape is sometimes it looks like a whip. It is seen in the large intestine, and its length is 3 to 5 centimeters. Mostly the eggs are found in the stool. Very rarely you can see the the parasite in the stool. So its egg is brownish, and it is a typical bipolar one pole, second pole, and then its shape is very typical, quite easy to diagnose in the stools. Mostly it is asymptomatic but may cause abdominal pain, diarrhea, appendicitis, and rectal collapse. This is the treatment. Brown egg already I have discussed. So this is the life cycle of the Trichuris trichuria. It is quite simple, like Entropius vermicularis, simple pico-oral route, no intermediate dose involved. Humans ingest the eggs, they go to the intestine, there they are exgestation develop into adults, and then the adults form the. As you can see, eggs are simply ingested, and the eggs are passed in the stool again. Trichuria asymptomatic but may cause dysentery, rectal collapse, or rectal bleeding. Anemia is quite rare. Going on to another parasite. Okay, sometimes you may be asked in the MCQs the sexually transmitted parasites. So can any student tell any parasite that is sexually transmitted? Any student, any sexually transmitted parasite? Okay, I would move ahead. The most common is Trichomonas. Trichomonas vaginalis, one of the commonest sexually transmitted parasites. But rare ones are entamoebas, and the rare one, another one is fish bean. Of course, they are rare, very rarely transmitted. So, sexual. Trichomonas vaginalis, as you can see, this sexual transmission is there. Rather, 99% of the transmission of the Trichomonas is sexual transmission, hardly 1% are rare, very rare cases. Here you can see that its shape is quite confusing with the Giardia. So the Giardia lamblia vaginalis have one, then the difference is the number of flagella, but the nucleus is the most important. Yes.
सर आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
No voice.
So,
Our center, please check करेगा. Our center, are you available? Are you there?
जी हाँ कर रही हैं जी, वो ठीक कर रही हैं.
जी अब आ रही है आवाज. आप लोग आ रही है सबको, आप पार्टिसिपेंट्स? ओके.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
स्लाइड सही नजर आ रही हैं आपको सबको?
Yes, sir.
इसका स्लाइड क्लियर है.
Okay, you can continue. सब ठीक है? Everybody is satisfied? You can go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, just wait a minute. I hope the slide is visible and clear, and the voice is also better. I need some feedback.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I would continue. Here you can see the differences of Giardia and Trichomonas, and most important difference is the number of nuclei, while another major difference is in the movement. In the Giardia it is like falling leaf movement, while in Trichomonas it is the jerky movement. Here you can see the flagella of the Trichomonas. Sometimes Giardia and Trichomonas are confused with other non-pathogenic forms as well. So these are to be kept in mind that not every amoeboid or jerky movements are Giardia or Trichomonas. So these are the eggs that can be. These top four, they are the typical of Ascaris lumbricoides, different forms of Ascaris lumbricoides. You can see they are all bile stains are brown, and this is the Trichomonas. This is the Trichoris trichuria, that is again bile stained or brownish color, while this one is Entrobius vermicularis. You can see it is not bile stained and not brown. While this number 4 is Ankylostoma duodenale. these are the common eggs that are found in stools of the human beings. Also in Pakistan, all of them are quite common in Pakistan. Moving on to the bug that is also quite common, and that is malaria. Here I highlight few important differences from pathology point of view between falciparum and other forms of parasites, other forms of malaria. So you can see that we can diagnose through the small ring forms, and the small ring forms of Plasmodium falciparum. They are typically small in size, 1/5 of the size of the RBC, and sometimes they are attached to the periphery of the RBC. Sometimes they can show two signets or two dots in the ring form. So these differences are important to diagnose that it is Plasmodium falciparum. Another difference is that in one RBC you can see two ring forms in case of Plasmodium falciparum. So these are few 4 or 5 differences which are helpful in the diagnosis of Plasmodium falciparum from other Plasmodia. Here again you can see the signet form or headphone form. There are two dots. There is falciparum, two rings formed, and very rarely there are even the 3 ring forms in one RBC. And the attachment to the side or the wall of the RBCs. So these are the major differences that differentiate between Plasmodium falciparum and other. One of the other differences is the gametocytes, that is typically ring-shaped, typically crescent-shaped or moon-shaped. And here you can see the ring form of Plasmodium falciparum. Then is transmission. There are a few points which are important, and those are that the mosquito injects the sporozoite form into the human bodies. Sometimes you may be asked which form is released into the human body by the mosquito, and that is the sporozoite. Then it goes to the RBCs, and from the liver cells, the merozoites are released. So this form you have to remember that merozoites are released from the hepatocytes. This is the banana-shaped or ring form, or the green form of the Plasmodium falciparum. You can see, and these are the ring forms. Again, the same picture. And then the transmission. Besides the injection of sporozoite form, the mosquito also gains access to the gametocytes. And the gametocytes are sucked by the mosquito, and then the further transmission takes place inside the mosquito. Again, you can see that the sporozoites are released into the human body. They gain access to the liver cells, and from the liver cells, merozoites are released. And the important thing is that the vivax and sometimes the whale, it remains dormant inside the liver cells, and they are called the and you have to treat you have different medicines, while for vivax and whale you have to take other medicines which are active against parasites. The dormant form after treatment with those drugs, commonly used drugs against malaria, which are effective against the blood forms. And then you can see the schizants are also one of the forms which from the ring form they develop into the large trophozoite form, and then the schizant, and the schizant releases merozoites. This is the vivax. You can see the macrogametocytes for different forms. This is again the vivax. You can see that it is not typical ring form. It is a bit, you can see the amoeboid sort of form. Again, the vivax. So these are the differences you have to keep in mind that how to differentiate between Plasmodium falciparum and vivax. These two are the most common forms of malaria seen in Pakistan. So this is again the vivax amoeboid chromatin. Again, vivax. Here you can see. So these are the vivax. This is the ring form of whale. It is not that common in Pakistan, so I would show only one or two pictures. This is again a whale, Plasmodium whale, and it has different imbriated edge and the compact trophozoite. So I would skip whale because it is not that common. Then Plasmodium malariae is also not that common in Pakistan, so it has slightly different shape. And depending on the number of merozoites, sometimes merozoites in the Shaitan, you can differentiate between different forms of malaria. There are 10 merozoites in the Shaitan of malaria. There are 16 in case of a whale, by 12 to 24 in case of violence. This is again the ring form of Plasmodium falciparum. This is a typical feature of Plasmodium falciparum. Moving on to another parasite that is quite Pakistan, and that is Leishmania here gene that shows a nucleus and then a kinetoplast. This is a typical picture, but in microscope you see very small in size, but you can make out that they are the import forms of Leishmania, and sometimes they are seen inside the macrophages. Here again, the Leishmania amastipod form shown here. So Leishmania donovani, because this little form is called the Phaizar, while the cutaneous form is called the Leishmania tropica or oriental sore, and the third form is the mucocutaneous form. It is sometimes called as Spondia, and its route of transmission is through the sandfly, and typically phlebotomous is, and sometimes rarely it is this transmission is through blood transfusion and rarely through congenital. To remember its vector, that is the sandfly, because you may write other vectors like mosquito and other forms, and one of them would be sandfly. So you have to know the vector for the Leishmania. Incubation period is quite long, and that is 3 to 6 months. It can be seen intracellularly. Different diagnostic tests are ELISA, direct hemoglobination tests, immunofluorescence tests, and then simple neutropenia. Medium, that is culture medium that is used for this Leishmania is triple N. Typically, the patient in Kala Azar has pyrexia, but it also has hepatosplenomegaly. Spleen is quite enlarged. Other features are anemia and bacterial infections. Sodium stipoglucomate or pentostam is the typical. This is the sandfly phlebotomous, that is the vector for Leishmania. Leishmania tropica, or the skin form of the Leishmania, is quite common in Balochistan, while the visceral Leishmaniasis or Kala Azar is quite common in Kashmir. Here is another form of Leishmania, that is a promesticode form, that is usually seen either in the sandfly or in the culture form, triple N medium. Again, you can see the macrophage that is studied with the amastipod form, typically for Leishmania. Again, you can see the sandfly. So remember it and differentiate it from the mosquito. This is the typical feature of the Leishmania. Leishmania ulcer, the tropical leishmania that is common in Pakistan and few other parts of Pakistan as well. As you can see, the skin form the Leishmania tropica. Cutaneous leishmaniasis, again, this is the mucocutaneous form. That is not that common in Pakistan, but still you have to remember, because it is mostly seen in the Latin America. Here again, the life cycle that the sandfly injects the trophozoite form, investigate form into the human beings that go into the macrophages. In macrophages, they multiply and then they burst and release the investigates. Here again, you can see the insect ingesting. Then it is sucking the juice and sucking the investigate form. And then again injecting into the other. Over here. So it has a typical distribution in the world and amongst the organs. Mostly it involves spleen, liver, and sometimes the liver. Here the immunopathology is discussed. I will not go into the detail. Basically, it is the macrophages that retain it and prevent it from the antibodies. So human beings themselves defense system is almost knocked out because of the intracellular forms. In the mucocutaneous form that is mostly seen in Latin America, I will not go into the detail because basically it involves the skin as well as the mucous membrane. So it is called mucocutaneous. So in MCQs, you may be asked what are the parasites that can be seen in the human blood or the blood slide. So can any student suggest any name of the hemoparasites? Anybody?
Malaria.
Yes, one is the malaria. Yes. Any second? Malaria is quite common. Yes. Okay, so you have to remember these parasites because it may be given to you in the form of MCQ that choose the hemoparasite. That it is not a parasite because that is a virus. So it is a vector is there in mosquito, but it is basically a viral disease. So number one is the malaria that is most common, and second is the leishmania. You can see it in the blood film, and schistosoma can be seen in the blood, trypanosoma can be seen in the blood, toxoplasma can be seen in the blood. So these are the parasites. This is not there in Pakistan, but Wuchereria bankrupting larva, that is quite rare, loa, quite rare. So at least top 5 you have to remember. That is malaria, leishmania, schistosoma, trypanosoma, and toxoplasma. These can be seen in the blood. Rugia malai. That's all from my side. I think I have covered Valentine. And if there is any question from your side, you can ask. Thank you very much. Okay, if there is no question, thank you very much. You can take a break or next presentation. Thank you.
11:30 is a break. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
कपड़ा कपड़ा ढके आ गया बर्तन लेके कपड़ा ढके आ गया हाँ ओ खटरे तरफ है ना बर्तन कटोरी जाती आ गई यार असं